Hey, what's up? It's another Geekish podcast. Hello. Thanks so much for listening and joining us. Derek over there. I'm Pino. We talk about geeky stuff every week. Well, things that we enjoy. Some of them are geeky, some of them aren't. You know, it happens. But with the heat wave, Derek's all the way down there in Texas. I'm here in Colorado. But across pretty much most of the country, it's hot. It's summer, and it is just roasty, toasty hot. So we were going to talk a little bit about some of the nostalgic things that we remember doing as kids to keep cool.
I was going to say, like picture this, right? It is summer 1990-something. The sun is at the highest point in the sky. You hear distant ringing bells of the ice cream truck in the distance. Distant ringing you get it. And you have a limited supply of water balloons. You have that great skin burner, the slip and slide, and then you have waiting right up against your door that nice super soaker that sometimes worked. I feel like as kids in the 90s, we had a lot of options, and the summertime was just, I don't know, it was great.
I feel like, honestly, with a lot of my favorite summertime toys and activities, it was the only time you got to use it, because a lot of those things, I mean, you couldn't go have Super Soaker fight in December. It just didn't happen. Water balloons, same thing. Anything that involved water had to be outside, regardless of whether it was hot or not. You just couldn't have it inside. Mm-hmm. But they also caused a lot of pain.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, too, is you think back to, I guess, like the movies of the 90s, that always portrayed summer. There was always a scene where they tried to beat the heat somewhere or another. One that comes to mind right away is The Sandlot. Granted, that was, made in the 90s, set in the 50s or whatever. But they had the whole, let's all go to the pool. And, I mean, I never had that because, we didn't have an outdoor pool where I grew up. My cousin and I went to the indoor pool, but it wasn't the same kind of let's all go to the pool type of thing. But summer was one of those that is always portrayed as time to get in some trouble, time to cool down and do whatever you can. And I mean, I can remember a lot of stupid 90s commercials too that were just aimed at, the Super Soaker commercials that just went way over the top and you just it looked like fun, and then you get it, you're like, squirt. Oh.
Yeah. I actually had the summer pool moment, because in Longmont we had the city pool, Sunset Pool, I think it was. And it was a huge outdoor pool, and that was what you did all summer long. Every chance you got, it was like $1.50 or $1.75 to get in or something like that. You go stand in line, because the pool was only open from noon to 4 or 1 to 4 or something like that. So you have this line of kids just around the building waiting again. They open it up. You go up and swim for 4 or 5 hours. They shut it back down. Everybody goes home. But I would venture to guess between the age of 8 and 14, I was probably there 3 or 4 dozen times every summer doing that exact thing. Show up, wait in line with your swim trunks on, your goggles around your eyes, and your extra clothes in a little swim bag, and you got a couple dollars tucked away somewhere to go use the snack bar when they have stupid adult swim time. Go grab some candy from them or some nachos when you're between breaks and swimming. Go get chlorine out of your eyes from the swimming pool and the shower inside, and awkwardly when everybody's changing their clothes, and then have the teenage lifeguards glaring at you for everything you do, stepping on some goat heads in the sand.
Let's start off with the cooling off at the pool. Mm-hmm. Because you reminded me, actually I did at one point, I don't know, in elementary school I think it was, I had a babysitter that she'd come and drive and pick me up, and then we'd go to the pool in Greeley, and it was an outdoor pool. And for one, Adult Swim as a kid seems like it lasts forever.
In reality, it's 7.5 minutes.
right. And I never, as a kid, I never understood it, because none of the adults got in the pool. It was just, I think it was always just an excuse to make the kids rest, right?
I think of the kids' rest, and it's also for the sanity of all the lifeguards on duty. Yeah. That's 10 minutes of okay, you're not watching out for someone else's life for 10 minutes. Go get a sandwich.
Right. So then, you have the Adult Swim that, as a kid, felt like eternity, and it always just made you mad because no adults get in, or you get that one, the one little old lady who's like, "This is my time to shine," and she's in there just doing the water aerobics. 2, those 90s pools, those chemicals hit different, man. Back then that was when you had like some high schooler kid who was in charge of the pH balance, and sometimes you'd get in the pool and like instantly your eyes would just like burn.
All of them just red left to right.
Oh, God. You remember getting the pool out of the pool and you're like your eyes are kind of all blurry and they're all red and you look in the mirror like, oh my gosh.
I always hate with the outdoor pool of the temperature because there's always at least some sort of heater in the water for it, but it's never set up right. And with a pool that big, it takes days to adjust the temperature. So you get some hot summer days and you get some lifeguards who are doing that early morning practice. Okay, yeah, the pool's 70 degrees, it's fine. 70-degree pool when you're a chunky little 12-year-old jumping in the water, that's cold.
Well, I mean, it's not even that, too. You had to depend on the sun to warm it up, and if it rained like the night before and you didn't, register that, it's going to be cold water in there, too.
Mm-hmm.
And then $2 could get you so much snacks. You could get a bag of chips for $0.25, a soda for like 50 cents, and a hot dog if they had them, depending on where you went.
Whoa there, Mr. Moneybags. You were buying sodas. I believe we were getting plastic hugs in a jug.
That's what I was going to say. The juice, those I think were always my go-to, was the juice in the barrels.
Uh-huh.
The foil, sometimes it wouldn't rip off just right, and you had to use your teeth, which made your teeth feel all weird.
It was like the Kool-Aid that wasn't quite right.
Sometimes, though, I still see those at stores, and sometimes I'm just like, oh, that's the good stuff. But I mean, like, it's funny because now you go, when we went to Waterworld a few years back, now it's like, all right, guess we'll take out a loan to go have some fun in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cheap anymore. Because I mean, the pool used to be like $1 to get in,
mm-hmm.
and then you'd had the snacks, which you could make last. I mean, most of the time you were playing in the water, you weren't eating, but then you're always super hungry afterwards. But
well, and it felt like when you paid something for big pools, it made sense. Like even Waterworld, it's for anyone that doesn't live within 150 miles of Denver, Colorado. Waterworld is one of the biggest water parks in the country, and it is just an amusement park land of nothing but swimming pools, slides, water attractions, and it is the place that every Colorado kid dreams of going at some point every summer. But modern prices now, a family of 4, you're looking like $150 to get in the gate, which is rough. But it's awesome.
Well, here's the thing: is like we talked about this with theme parks before. It's awesome until you're standing in line and it's 98 degrees outside and you're not in the shaded part, and you still have to wait another 10 minutes, and you're just like, ugh. And by that time, your sunscreen's wore off, so you can feel you're just getting a little crisp.
It does defeat the purpose when you're standing in line for an hour and a half for a ride on burning a concrete, searing the skin on your back just to get on a ride to quote unquote cool down.
Right.
But some of the other ones get so overpriced, like some local pools and community pools I see around. A lot of indoor pools are like this, or little neighborhood pools. I mean, the entire pool is 12 by 25 feet long, and they're like, oh yeah, you want to swim in here? That'll be $775. Like, excuse me?
And that's only for like 4 hours. If you want to swim longer, it's because some of them had those stipulations too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I kind of like the neighborhood pools type of thing. That going on. We have the pool at the apartment complex. You have your little neighborhood pool, which is nice, but sometimes it just gets a little crowded, and you want to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have that. Well, I mean, I didn't grow up in an apartment complex, but in neighborhoods back in the early '90s didn't really have the community pool areas.
There was like that one or two neighborhood that had the neighborhood pools.
Yeah,
I wasn't friends with those kids.
A common thing.
I wanted to be friends with those kids.
Right. And then you always had the the above ground pools or the kiddie pools. Those ones. I had friends who had a couple of those where you get out the wrong way and that pool's done.
I hated them. Even as a kid, I didn't like they're nice to have once in a while. But even as a 12-year-old, it seemed like a complete waste of money because it was literally like weeks of setup to get this thing set up in the yard. Then the kids would use it for like 4 hours. Doesn't get used again. Gets a dead animal or a whole bunch of leaves on the top of it. Nobody wants to swim it the rest of the summer. Then the parents take it down, get all angry, and then do the same thing next summer. Like, you should just shell out the cash for a membership at the pool at this point.
Well, I was gonna say that's the thing too. Is you nailed it. You're like, oh, we should go swimming today, and it's like 8 a.m. All right, let's get the hose out, put the hose in there, let it run. 2 hours later, it's maybe halfway there, depending on how big that pool was. And then, you get your parents mad because the water bill's going up. you're getting impatient. You jump in, and that water is freezing cold.
you never want to go in again.
Right? And then you were like, okay, we'll give it a couple days. So it cooks in the sun a little bit, and then it starts getting that nice green film over it.
It makes the kid messing with the pool chemicals at the public pool that much nicer.
Right. So let's go on to another thing that was huge in the 90s that I guess was invented. I looked at it in like the 50s or the 60s, and that's the slip and slide. Mm-hmm. Good for like the first 2 uses, and then after that, it never works how it worked out of the box. And
well, it never worked in general. I mean, I see some of the slip and slides they have now. Like I've got some family members that have some slip and slides that are pretty solid slip and slides if you have the right yard for it. Mm-hmm. But there's all kinds of engineering feats that go into it to make it work. The slip and slides as we were kids were literally a big yellow plastic tarp that you used metal stakes that you just shoved in the ground.
Mm-hmm. And then it had the little holes where you hooked up the hose to that did some. Well, no, that was a fancy one because sometimes they had the holes that spat up and they never worked right because they never landed on the thing. Mm-hmm. So you'd run and you'd hit that one part and go.
Yeah, you imagine that if anyone that grew up in the 90s probably has that feeling of getting rug burn from a piece of plastic.
Yeah.
You go jumping and you go full speed, slide down there, face first, and you start slipping and sliding, and then you hit the dry spot.
Well, that was the thing. Is like, if I remember correctly, the first slip and slide didn't really have the little jets. Like you had to kind of just hose it down.
You just put a hose in there. There was a little plastic piece you screwed on the end of the hose that was basically a garden soaker that just put it in a half circle shape of water coming out, and you're supposed to just throw that on a plastic stake at the top of it and say, there you go, there's water.
Yeah, and then they made it so you connect it directly to the slip and slide, and it shot through with the little arches, which never worked right. And then you'd think that they would 100% one of the pieces before trying to go, you know what? Let's throw a pool at the end of it that's only going to collect about this much water, and it's going to hurt like hell when you hit it.
If you hit it.
That's true. Most of the time you got launched right over it.
Well, it's like the idea of slip and slides were great, but most people didn't have the right yard for it. Because you had to have a yard that gave you a big enough space to get a running start, but you had to have enough of a grade that kept the water going in the right direction, but not too much of a grade you got going too fast or they're off to the side. So you had to have like this huge flat open space with about a 15% grade on it, but level.
Well, that's the thing too. Is not only did you have to have the right yard, you also you had to know how to run and jump on it the right way without getting hurt. I don't know how many times I ran and then I was like, and then I like tried to slide on it weird and like landed on my hip weird or something like that. That's probably why my knees pop like they do.
And if you had your own yard, you got used to it, but you had somebody else's house, and there was always some weird tree root place that they knew about, but you didn't know about. So you go sliding on, you get this huge knob of an oak tree root, you jump right on. Oh.
I think my grandma got one of those for her yard I think we tore it at one point, which, then it becomes useless. So then we did the old-fashioned thing of getting that sprinkler. We had one of those little rainbow sprinklers, and we just set that up. And my cousin and I would play in that until my grandma's yard started to get like a big, the big puddle of water.
When you get so much water, you actually kill all the grass.
Yep. So that you're just running. You're like, and as kids we're like, oh yeah, we just jump in this muddy water to be splashed up. Like, yeah. Parents are like, get out of there. But I mean,
the sprinklers also led to a lot of the water gun fights. We won't go too ad nauseum into water guns, as we've talked about super soakers probably more than most adults do in this podcast. But the sprinklers led to the water fights really easily because that could become a whole almost neighborhood game, and the hose was the unfair advantage. Then we had the water guns, and when the super soakers came out, the water guns of old were just those little plastic things that maybe you would shoot 5 or 10 feet, and then suddenly you get the Super Soaker 50 that you could then shoot a quarter off somebody's head from 75 yards, and there's a lot more water going at it. But then you mentioned water balloons earlier. Is that a technology that has evolved somewhat since when we were kids too? Because what I remember of water balloons is it was always a great idea, but it just ended up being nothing but pain.
Well, it's not even that too. It's it's a great idea until you're spending a half an hour to 45 minutes prepping by filling up the water balloons, right? And then it would be what, like 1 in every 6 would pop.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you'd either pop because it was, structurally weak, because I mean they had to be weak so they could pop. So you're sitting there trying to fill it up, it just pops, or you put it in the in the bucket that you have or whatever, and then it just goes. You're like, oh.
And some sibling or friend comes over and tries to grab one off the bottom and pops 6 more on the way out because they wanted the blue one.
Yeah. Which doesn't matter. But I mean, I got jealous because now, I don't know how well they work because I haven't used it, but now they have that one where you hook it up to your hose or whatever, or sink, depending, and it has all those little branches off, and you can connect like 20 different water balloons, and it fills them all up at the same time.
Yeah, I haven't actually tried that because I've been leery of it, but I just
I want to know how well that works.
I swear the water balloons are best. Like, you go to pick one up, and it breaks in your hand, or you check it to somebody else, and when you get hit with those things, and they're the most painful thing ever. It's literally like a rock. This little rubber balloon, and you hit somebody, and it doesn't explode. You just hear that little, and you see it like ricocheting off of their back, and it's leaving these red welts and bumps on the back of all your friends. You're like, oh, I got you, water fight. Somebody gets hit in the eye with one and starts going home crying. You break a window.
I was going to say, so my family every summer, there's the little Eaton Community Days thing there. Every summer they do a little get together, and all the family get together at my grandma's house, and we'd always have water fights. It exactly start with the sprinkler, water guns, and then water balloons. And we actually had to stop, one year because one of the cousins took a water balloon to the face and just started crying. So then they were like, okay, we're done. No more of this one. And it just ruined the fun for everybody for years to come. And every summer we're like, remember when we used to do this?
You were all super mad at that cousin for a long time too, weren't you?
So
for getting hit in the face.
Well, and that's the thing too, is you nailed it. Like, the water balloons were never consistent. It was, you go to throw it, pops in your hand, right? If it makes it in the bucket, or you throw it and sometimes it pop midair, or it would hit them, square in the chest and just do that whole like little blob thing and then pop on the ground. Or if you're lucky enough, it would land on the ground and you'd be like, we could still use this. Yeah. Or sometimes when you go to pick it up and it pops right away, you're like, what the heck? But then there's sometimes that one balloon would last a couple of hits and it
or
never
more.
made any sense.
It was the equivalent of like when you're having a snowball fight and you have somebody making snowballs in the grass and somebody else making snowballs with the snow from the gravel driveway. There's a few ringers in there. So all of our outdoor keeping cool, my memory serves me, has been a lot of injuries involved with staying cool.
I mean, here, let me ask you this too. With the outdoor keeping cool, you're in a water gun fight or a water balloon fight and you're thirsty, you're dripping wet, you've been yelled at by going in the house. What do? You grab the hose, right? And you drink out of the hose. Did you ever hurt yourself because that hose was sitting in the sun and you just turn on the water and it just scalding hot water hits you right in the face?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it tasted weird, too.
Or the hose itself, you go to grab it and the ones that had the metal ends on them. Second-degree burn from the water fountain. But now, the moving on to some of the more less injury-prone things, water fights also were often finished up with popsicles. Got them to the swimming pool, got them after water fights. Hot summer days, popsicles were the best.
And what are you talking about?
They are, and I feel like the popsicles, the paper-wrapped ones, are okay, but nothing was as good as, well, Otter Pops were the luxury brand. But Flavor Ice are what most of the ones I had growing up. Now they have store brand ones, stuff like that, where it's just a plastic clear pouch of bright colored liquid that gets frozen in there. Oh,
that's my go-to. You know how obsessed I am with those anyway. Like, as an adult, I go through a box of those like every 2 weeks. But it's funny you bring up the popsicles with that weird paper wax paper covering on it, where you pull it off and it gets stuck to the popsicle itself. So you're like trying to pull the paper off with your teeth,
and you just give up and eat it anyway.
Yeah, or the same with the ice cream sandwiches. You're pulling that off and it gets stuck.
And I feel bad because as an adult you never want to buy that stuff, but sometimes I'll take the kiddo and we'll go down the aisle of the grocery store that has all the popsicles, desserts, those kind of things in there. And nostalgia hits really hard, because I've had so many of the things in that aisle. I've had so many of the things in that aisle They're like, oh, wow, I remember those. I haven't had one of those in 30 years. Oh, those were delicious. Am I going to pay $6 to have one now? No. But you had the little push pop things. Remember the Flintstones push pop popsicles?
Where you ended up eating at least a chunk of cardboard with it?
Yeah, with popsicle stuffed. It was somewhere between a popsicle and yogurt stuffed inside a toilet paper tube. But, man, it was good.
There's something about them. Those just hit differently on a nice summer day. And it's like just pushing up. And then it gets to the point where you can't, like, the thing doesn't really work well. So you have to, like...
You got the classic, the bomb pops and just the regular... popsicles. What was the name brand of it? Though everything was it just Popsicle brand popsicles?
They're in the yellow box.
Yeah, but they had fudgesicles. They had the creamsicles were the best. Oh god, creamsicles were good.
I would always go for those, and you just eat the outside first. So like that weird whipped cream or whatever it is in the middle, and then you just eat that.
Oh, the orange creamsicle, that was a dream.
I kind of want one now.
I know. I have to take the kid back to the store again for this.
Right. I think we forgot something. But I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could have been taken, that we used.
I can bring this back to injuries once again.
Okay.
Because this goes back a little bit back into the 80s. But we're talking popsicles, not a far cry from snow cones, which are also great things. Every school carnival, you got those worst snow cones ever. It was that hard, super crunchy ice that melted in about a minute and a half, and then they poured some super sugary flavoring syrup on top of it.
Yeah.
But then there's some decent snow cones along the way. But almost every family in the country had the Snoopy snow cone maker, where you got to make your own shaved ice. Well, that's what I said. It's a little before your time, because also every family that had a Snoopy snow cone maker had at least 3 severed fingers in their families from cutting themselves trying to make snow cones in the Snoopy snow cone maker. Because you had this little weird plastic thing, you had to put the ice cubes in the top, but they'd always get stuck, so you'd have to jam it down with this little tool, but the tool didn't fit the whole way, so you have to try and pick it out. So while your sister's twisting the bottom of it to make the blade spin, you're shoving your hand in there trying to get the ice cube unstuck, and every time somebody... Mom, I need a Band-Aid. Don't eat that snow cone.
You get the ice out. You're like, I told you not to put the flavoring on yet. Well, it's funny you bring up snow cones, too, because for the longest time, I thought they had to be that really hard, crunchy ice. That's what I thought a snow cone was until I had, like, my first actual, like, shaved ice. I was like,
yeah, I don't know why anybody would choose crushed ice over shaved ice for a snow cone. That's just, like, serial killer talk.
Well, that, and you're like with the crushed ice too, the flavor always just went to the bottom. So like you're sitting here drinking all of it, and then you're just left with ice that you're like, throw it away. Parents are like, I paid $4 for that. That and the Slurpees. We're no strangers to Slurpees.
Oh yes, we'll have to do another Slurpee. We'll have to do a virtual Slurpee challenge one of these days.
Well, I mean, it's coming up. But I mean, you had the Slurpees and you had slushies, which slushies were always just, I feel like, more sugar than a Slurpee. Mm-hmm.
We had the Slurpees at 7-Eleven. You had where were the
skating rinks?
Well, skating rinks had the slush puppies.
Yeah, okay. But then you had the slushies with the, you know what I'm talking about, with the polar bear on it. It's the red and blue cup.
Polar bear. That's icy.
Icy, yeah.
Icy. That was at Kmart and Walmart had those ones.
Yeah. See, we had a few options.
I know stuff.
Oh man, but I mean, those were always a different breed too, because like sometimes back in the '90s, I mean, as a kid, you're like, oh yeah, I want a Slurpee, and you get a Slurpee expecting an icy, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot.
And can we ever forget the visiting the mall summer treat of an orange Julius?
Oh my god!
And a Choco Taco.
That's funny that I had on my Facebook memories from like when we were in radio came up the other day about me cursing you because I wanted a Choco Taco.
You're welcome, because it just happened again.
Orange Julius, that's something I haven't thought of in a long time. God, those are so good.
Yeah, and they're still around, but they're like, they've changed a little bit because they probably took out a little bit of preservatives and MSG or whatever chemicals they're using in them. So they taste.
Have they changed, or have we?
They've changed somewhat. They're still good, but they're not quite as iconic as I remember them being. Because we still have one, I mean, just down the street in Windsor, there's one there that's mixed in with the Dairy Queen. You can still get an Orange Julius, and it's good, but it's not quite the same as it was.
Gosh, should we wrap things up with the Dairy Queen and the dipped cones?
Well, we probably should, because we could probably tell. Well, I'll hit in a few other things that I thought of for keeping cool in the summer. One, sleeping with the windows open and every fan in the house on.
Yep.
Can't do that now because someone in the house doesn't like the fan blowing hair in their face. But that was like a way of childhood. You air conditioning, we're not paying for that all night. You can open the darn window. You have like 4 fans on blowing every part of your body, like trying to make it cold. And me and my friends had a game we had, I forget what we call it, we just call it iceberg or something like that. We would take all the fans in the house that we could get and put them on all these sheets. And it would almost make it like an inflatable tent. And then everybody would get down to just like their shorts and go inside and see who could last the longest inside it, because it would get frigid, especially when you did it closer to dark. So you're getting this fight, and then everyone's just start shivering and dying until they jump out back into the 90-degree weather. Throw some ice cubes in front of the fans. Ah, it was good times. That's one of my lost memories, but...
Dude, just those nice, like the nice quiet summer nights. You know, you have the windows open, crickets chirping. You know, I had that stupid oscillating fan that never worked quite right, so it'd go like this, it'd go had that tick in it.
And at least once a week, you'd have to go walk into a gut. Luke, I'm your father.
Or Transformers. 100% all the time.
Still do it when I see those. Because there's something about those big, huge buttons you had to push on the bottom that was so satisfying when you went between off and low, medium, and high. There was just that ka-chunk, ka-chunk.
Yep. And if you were lucky enough that your parents kept one of the old metal ones, you definitely got a little too close to that, or for whatever reason you looked at it, you're like, I wonder what would have happened if I put my finger in this.
And we're back to injuries yet again.
Yep. Sounds about right.
Summer fun keeping cool means bleeding from the fingers. We could probably keep going on this, but we'll cut it short because we know you've got important things to do too. But hit us up social media at Geekish. I want to know, what is your favorite way to stay cool in the summertime? Whether it be something you did as a kid, favorite memory of staying cool in the summer, or something you do now. And points for creativity. If you say I go in the basement and turn the air conditioning on, I'm going to delete your comment.
No, you won't. He'll just judge you from afar.
I'll like it and I'll agree with it, and then I'll delete it. I want some creativity here because selfishly, I'm looking for some more ideas.
Right? I don't know. I think it's time to go hop in the car and go maybe get some orange dreamsicles, or go to get a cherry dipped cone.
Yep, that is going to happen. All right.
It's like 90-something degrees. Make it happen.
Well, it's a Get Geekish podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you're staying cool this summer. Let us know your favorite staying cool memory at Get Geekish, and we will talk at you next week.